Thank you so much. I have the delight of introducing the Pragmatic Clinical Trials Unit, or PCTU, to you. Now, for those of you who've been at Queen Mary for a long time, it actually feels a bit funny to be introducing PCTU to you, because actually in some capacity or another, the trials unit have been conducting trials since the 1990s. And when the UK CRC registration first launched in 2007, we were one of the first trials units registered. And for those who aren't familiar with what UK CRC registration means, what it means is that an international independent body looks at the work that we do and judges it to be of sufficiently high standard to warrant registration. So it's quite a mark of prestige of the work that we do. And there are about 50 registered units, and I think we are the only one that has pragmatic as part of our name. And I think that's a really important part of who we are and what we do. So the type of research that we do tends to be pragmatic clinical trials. And what that means is that we're interested in how we might design or conduct or deliver research that has direct implications right now for health and social care. So looking at questions of how we can change or improve treatment, change or improve behavior to make sure that patients and participants are receiving the best possible care, and to really answer those key clinical questions for the health service right now. And we do that across a range of different collaborations and with different groups. So traditionally, we've done a lot of work in primary care, in bone and joint health, critical care, psychiatry, but we're always really open to new ideas and new collaborations and new areas where there are really interesting questions about what's the most effective way to do things. But I think we're also pragmatic in the way that we go about things. If you have ever done a trial that from the very initial idea all the way through to the final reporting and implementation went perfectly to plan and was exactly the way you dreamt it, come and talk to me later, because I have got to know what your secret is. Generally, these trials are big. They have lots of moving parts. They are complex. And there are lots of times when we need to really think on our feet. We need to be agile. We need to be creative. And we need to be pragmatic. We need to think about what can we do? What can we change? What can we adapt in order to make sure that a trial can be delivered and that it can answer the research question that we originally posed. And I think that that's something that we're really good at doing, is thinking pragmatically about how we can do that, how we can work with collaborators to get to the answer that we need, even in the presence of sometimes some quite disruptive things like COVID. And the reason that I think we can do that is because we have a fantastic team. You'll hear a lot in the coming months and years about team science from the big UK funders like NIHR and UKRI. And I think there's this increasing realization that often science doesn't happen because of some lone genius who discovers something and designs it and implements it. Science usually happens, new things happen, we develop trials because of a really great team coming together. And that's something that trials units have known for a long time. Everyone that's part of our group, you know, our statisticians, our data managers, our trial managers, our quality team, our administrators, they all bring something to the project. They bring their expertise, they bring their experience, and we are more than the sum of our parts as a result of that. And I'm really, really proud of the team that we have at PCTU. I think we have fantastic people who are really committed to trial delivery. And I'm ever so grateful to get to work for them. And if we showcase nothing else today, I think the fantastic staff within the centre is something to be really, really proud of. So I'm actually going to turn over now to two of those great people. We have lots of trials that we run at various stages, probably about 35 to 40 in various stages within the unit. And so it was really hard to just pick two for today. But I think the two that you're going to hear about are really good at illustrating some of the points I've just talked about, the way that we can be creative and agile, the way that we can help to engage participants and sites in trial delivery, even when things can be a little bit challenging. So I'm going to turn over to Laura and then to Susie to talk about the IBD Boost study and then the Attack MS study. So thank you very much, and over to them.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Miller and I am a Programme Manager at the PCTU working on the IBD Boost programme. which is an NIHR-funded program grant looking at living well with symptoms of fatigue, pain and urgency in inflammatory bowel disease, otherwise known as IBD. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the program today and where we're up to with it. So just for starters, these are some of the people that we're working with. So we've got quite a lot of collaborators on this study. We're sponsored by London North West University Healthcare Trust. We also have collaborators with King's College London. The Pragmatic Clinical Trials Unit is helping to run the study. And as I mentioned, we're funded by the NIHR. And it's also a collaboration with the charity Crohn's and Colitis UK as well. So just a little bit of background about the programme of research. Firstly, inflammatory bowel disease. So inflammatory bowel diseases, the most common of these are Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. And they affect over 300,000 people in the UK, so more than Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis, around 1 in 400 people. And inflammatory bowel disease usually starts when people are either a child or a young adult. And what we found from background work that we've done and that other people have done as well is that symptoms of fatigue, pain and bowel control are top concerns for patients even when they're in remission. So even when they're not in flare, people are still experiencing these symptoms and having difficulty with them. So more specifically about these symptoms, so many patients have fatigue, pain and incontinence together, so similar to other long-term conditions with multiple symptoms. So we know that these symptoms must coexist, but we don't know much about the symptom clusters and how they interrelate. But what we do know from speaking to patients is that they don't want separate appointments and programs. They want self-management because they already have a lot of medical appointments. And there's strong evidence that tailored but also supported self-management works best. So when you've kind of got somebody supporting you and helping you to go through the programme. And then in terms of background work on symptom management, so firstly, fatigue, we know that it's a problem. Over 40% of patients experience fatigue even when they're in remission. A tool's been developed to measure it, and we've also piloted a cognitive behavioural intervention. Then pain, we've done a review and 62% of patients report daily pain. A survey and also online intervention has been developed and piloted for pain as part of a PhD. And this online intervention is what we then have gone on to test as part of the main BOOST trial for all 3 symptoms, so fatigue, pain and urgency. And then incontinence. So the size of the problem has been established. So up to 75% of patients do experience incontinence. Also, a tool has been developed and a paper intervention has been tested for this. So in terms of the IBD Boost programme, basically, can we put all of this work together into an online programme which is tailored to individual needs? But also looking at whether patients have any undiagnosed medical issues that could be causing these symptoms and which could be treated, because the last thing we want to do is put people into a self-management programme if they do have, urgent medical issues, if they're in flare and it hasn't been picked up, that they sort of need tackling, And overall, can we improve patients' quality of life and also reduce costs for the NHS? Which brings us to the IBD Boost programme. So as I mentioned, IBD Boost is a programme grant. It's funded by the NIHR. It's a £2.3 million of funding over 5 years, plus a year's cost extension due to the impact of COVID-19. And the aim of the programme is to improve the well-being of patients with inflammatory bowel disease by reducing the burden of these most common and troublesome chronic symptoms, the fatigue, the pain and incontinence, and thus hopefully improving people's quality of life and also reducing disease management costs for the NHS. And yes, the programme started in 2017, so we've been on it for quite a long time now. A lot of work's gone into it, and we're nearing an end. We're due to finish in October 2023. So in terms of the programme outline, so initially there was some qualitative work, with focus groups looking at patient priorities. And then with patients and also nurses, there was this co-design of an online self-management programme, which, as I mentioned, was piloted initially for the pain symptom as part of a PhD. And then the three main studies of the BOOST programme, the first of these is the IBD BOOST survey, which is a survey of symptoms, associations, clusters, and also establishing desire for help with these symptoms. And so we aimed to approach around 12,500 people to sign up over 15 NHS sites, and also to have options of online or postal. Optimize. So this was a checklist and algorithm developed with IBD nurses for nurses to use to detect any potentially reversible causes, including disease activity for symptoms. So, for example, if somebody is experiencing fatigue, whether they've had bloods done recently, which could show, for example, anemia that could be treated. It is sort of basically standard care or usual care. These are all things that should be done as standard, but sometimes for whatever reason can sort of fall behind. So it's basically just to check that nothing's been missed that should have been sort of looked at already. And then if there is anything, the algorithm would then instruct nurses on how to deal with that, treat and reassess people. So that was a sample size of 200 people. And then finally, the randomized controlled trial. So it's an online self-management package which has a sort of basis around cognitive behavioural therapy. And as I mentioned, this time it's for all three symptoms, but it was piloted for pain. But also this element of IBD nurse specialist support, because as we mentioned, that kind of supported self-management works best. And this is versus care as usual. But after 12 months, control participants were given access to the intervention, but without any support. And we had an initial sample size of 680 people, which was revised to a minimum of 740. And also part of the programme, we do have health economics as well and process evaluation to have a look at, how people have found the intervention, what people's thoughts were, and if it does work, why that might be, or why not. So this is a very small diagram, but just to show how the studies kind of feed into each other. So the survey feeding into the optimized study, but also directly feeding into the randomized controlled trial as well. So you can kind of go from the survey straight into the randomized controlled trial. But we did also invite some participants to the optimized medical study. So firstly, the IBD BOOST survey, where are we now with it? So in terms of a survey update, so we started recruitment in March 2019, and our original target was 6,250 participants. We had 19 sites set up in total with 18 open, and that includes NHS Trusts, Crohn's and Colitis UK, and the IBD Bioresource as well. But COVID-19 did severely impact site capacity to invite participants, and there were only 4 sites actively recruiting in December 2020. So we requested a 1-year costed extension from the NIHR, which was approved. And we also implemented a self-selection recruitment route because before that point, sites had been sort of inviting people unselected. They were inviting kind of anyone eligible to participate in this survey. But we decided to also introduce a self-selection route as well, via infusion clinics, advertising on social media and IBD-related websites, and that was introduced in May 2021, and recruitment finished on the 1st of July 22. So in the end, 26,718 invitations were sent out to the unselected cohort, as we had overestimated both the response rate to the survey, but also the proportion of participants who would then translate into participants for the IBD BOOST trial. But we did receive 8,486 responses, so quite a few more than our original 6,250, which was our original target. And so preliminary findings from the survey, so we've got those in now. And what we found was that 4,176 patients reported experiencing Crohn's disease, and 4,255 ulcerative colitis or another form of IBD. 3,281 of respondents identified as male and 4,883 as female, with a median age of 51 years. And in the past 7 days, 30% of respondents reported having fatigue, 21% reported having pain, and over 50% fecal incontinence. And also just over 10%, so nearly 11% of people reported experiencing all 3 symptoms. We did find that fatigue and pain were moderately correlated. Both of these symptoms had a lower correlation with incontinence. Over half of respondents definitely wanted help for fatigue, 42% wanted help for pain, and 53% for incontinence, and nearly a third of patients reported definitely wanting help for all 3. So this study confirms that pain, fatigue, and urgency are common in IBD, and for the first time reports the coexistence and unmet need for help with these symptoms. Then IBD Boost Optimize, where are we? So we started recruitment in February 2020, but this was the sort of study that was most impacted by COVID-19, and due to the impact we had to pause and had approval from the NIHR to amend our original sample size, which was 500, down to 200 participants. We had a 1-year costed extension, as I mentioned, approved by them, and a total of 4 NHS sites were opened in the end. Recruitment to the study finished on the 30th of September 2022, and we did manage to get a total of 201 participants consented, so we're more than our target. We did find that 36 participants, so 17.9%, didn't return the fecal calprotectin kit posted out to them, and 14, so 6.9%, didn't complete the symptom checklist that they were given. But of 71 3-month outcome questionnaires sent out, 57, so 80%, were returned. Analysis of the results for this study is still pending, but we've already had discussions with IBD nurses about how the checklist and algorithm could be implemented at trusts, just to make sure that, as standard, nothing is being missed, and that, anything that patients kind of want to talk about or any issues they might be having are raised and addressed. Then finally, the IBD Boost trial. So we started recruitment to the trial in December 2019. And again, COVID-19 severely impacted site capacity to open the study and facilitate the intervention. We ended up with a total of 4 NHS sites. So we decided to refocus on pushing central study team recruitment, so kind of recruiting participants from like a general pool rather than sort of via sites, and also facilitating intervention participants ourselves. The central study team, we sort of trained up to do that. As I mentioned, a 1-year extension was approved, and we additionally advertised for and trained a bank of central NHS facilitators, so people not with sites who are participating, but a central bank of nurses. And recruitment to the trial finished on the 31st of July 2022, and in the end we randomised a total of 780 participants, which was 40 over the revised minimum target of 740. And of our 786-month follow-ups due, which is our primary outcome, 647 were fully completed, so 83%. And of 614 12-month follow-ups that were due, 453 were fully completed, so 74%. So analysis of these results is still pending, but we're hoping to have the headline outcomes by the 14th of September 2023. And thank you very much for listening.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the ATTACK-MS trial. This is a phase 2 placebo-controlled, double-blinded, randomised controlled feasibility trial, and we are looking at treatment for very early multiple sclerosis. So the title of my talk is A Race Against Time, and that will become clear as we go through. Multiple sclerosis, it's a condition where the immune system attacks nerve fibres in the brain and spinal cord, and this results in inflammation and demyelination. So that results in damage, which causes scarring, which forms these lesions in the brain and spinal cord. So depending on where these lesions are located, that determines what kind of symptoms the person will experience. So evidence suggests that more extensive nerve damage in the very early stages of multiple sclerosis is correlated with worse long-term outcomes for patients. So worsening disability and experiencing disability earlier in the course of the disease. It's been found that early use of highly effective disease-modifying treatments, DMTs, can limit this very early nerve damage and may even promote repair of the lesions, so can really limit how much damage is done in these early stages of MS when there's lots of inflammation causing a lot of damage. And you can see in this study where MS patients who were given natalizumab, which is a highly effective DMT, it severely limited the new lesions that were formed, whereas people who were taking a placebo, they had lots of new lesions appearing. So it's showing that this highly effective DMT is really inhibiting how many lesions are formed. So ATTACK-MS will trial starting a highly effective DMT, natalizumab, in the first 14 days of people first experiencing any symptoms suggestive of multiple sclerosis. So the aim is that by limiting this damage very, very early in multiple sclerosis, that will lead to better long-term outcomes for patients. The primary objectives of the trial: to test natalizumab safety, efficacy, and to advance mechanistic understanding. So Tisabri, that you'll see throughout this talk, that is the brand name of the drug. The other objective is to establish whether it's feasible to enrol people within 14 days of their first symptoms suggestive of MS. And then the primary clinical objective is we are measuring whether there is efficacy superiority of the drug over placebo in facilitating remyelination of demyelinated lesions. So where there's been damage, often myelin is lost from the nerves, and remyelination is actually this damage being repaired. So using MRI of people's brains at the beginning of the study, and then later on, we can see if there's been any repair, any remyelination of this early damage. It's the design of the study. We are recruiting 40 participants. They're going to be randomised on a 1-to-1 ratio to receive either natalizumab or placebo. They'll receive it intravenously every 4 weeks for the first phase of the study. So this first 8 weeks is the blinded phase. So the participants and everyone involved in the study won't know who's having placebo and who's having the drug. Then at 12 weeks, we do the MRI scan to look at the lesions in people's brains and spinal cords to see if there's been any repair. So we compare that to their baseline MRI. And then for this open label phase, the last part of the study, all of the participants will receive the trial drug. And then at the end of the study at 24 weeks, we will do some secondary outcome measures, which are different assessments. We'll collect data on sort of disability and functioning. After participating in the study, all of our participants can carry on natalizumab or another DMT for as long as it's clinically relevant, and this will be funded by the NHS. So all of the participants will end up having treatment quite early on, even if they are in the placebo arm. So there are two main challenges in recruiting to this study. The first one is there's a big variation in presentation. So as we said at the beginning, depending on where the damage is located, it determines what symptoms the person experiences. So if there is damage in the optic nerve, people will experience eye symptoms such as visual loss, eye pain and double vision. So these people would typically visit ophthalmology, A&E or an ophthalmologist. People can also experience stroke-like symptoms such as weakness, numbness, problems with swallowing, problems with speech, big variety of symptoms. These can be quite gradual onset, so people might not act on them very quickly if they come on quite slowly. So people might be seeing their GP, or they might be waiting to see what happens, or they might think that it is more urgent and go to A&E. So because people are experiencing all these different symptoms, they're going to see different healthcare professionals at different stages. So it's very hard for us to identify everyone who fits the criteria for our study because they are quite dispersed. The second big challenge is we want people to enrol in the study within 14 days of symptom onset. This is vital because it's part of the rationale of the study that we are stopping this very early inflammation. So currently, the average time between presentation with first symptoms and diagnosis is between 152 and 215 days in current NHS pathways, which obviously a lot longer than our 14 days. So again, trying to actually identify these participants and get in touch with them to give them information about the study within 14 days is a really big challenge. As a result, we've been really focusing on, just to let you know, once participants have been enrolled in the study, they are incredibly happy. So everyone who's been invited to participate has enrolled. No one has dropped out, and we've had really good feedback. Particularly, participants are happy they're having a very quick diagnosis and treatment, which wouldn't be available to them otherwise. Sorry, my finger then. So we have been focusing on recruitment to try and identify those participants as quickly as possible. So we have sent out monthly newsletters and fortnightly emails. We've got a list of people working in relevant departments in different NHS trusts, which we remind about the study so they can speak to any people who might be eligible that they come into contact with. We have a Twitter account where we give updates on the study and MS news just to sort of raise awareness. We have posters in relevant parts of the hospital so people can self-refer the contact information. We have Attack MS merchandise, t-shirts and things which we're distributing. We have business cards with a brief summary of the study and our contact details that we give out. We have an MS fitness influencer who's promoting the study. We have a website about to go live, and we're also relying on promotion by charities that already have a large audience. So just to show you, we have several YouTube videos about the study that are online. The MS Trust did an interview with one of our trial participants, asking him what it's been like to be diagnosed with MS and then very quickly enrolled into a trial and what his experience has been like. We have this video which is by Dominic, who runs the MS Guide, and it's aimed at people who have been newly diagnosed with MS, telling them about the study and what would be involved in taking part. And we also have a presence on lots of websites and charities and our partners, etc. So these are just ways that we are publicly getting the trial out there to try to get so people can be referred into the trial. We've also the team has been doing lots of presentations, again, to raise awareness with people that either could be eligible for the trial or come into contact with people that could be eligible. So off the back of some of these, we've had contact with NHS trusts who wanted to find out more and how they can support the trial. So we have several trusts now that when they come into contact with potentially eligible participants, that they will give them the opportunity to see if they want to take part in the trial. And that's in sort of Cambridge, Worcester, various places around the country. I think I've run out of time, but thank you very much for your attention.